Immanuel Kant, a philosopher king for the modern world. Immanuel Kant was born in modern-day Kaliningrad in 1724 into a family of 9 children. Growing up, his parents were middle-class artisans who never wanted for food, but were never wealthy. He was brought up in the Pietist faith tradition, which taught a literal interpretation of the Bible. This school of thought emphasized soul-searching, prayer, and study of scriptures. His education of forced religiosity at the Collegium Fredericanum for molding young men into good Christians encouraged him to seek refuge in intellectual disciplines. The institution functioned as an epistemically sealed cave of false reality. The school's curriculum emphasized religion and the classics over math and science. In Kant's mind, classics were the lesser of the two evils, and he embraced the study of ancient works.
Over time, Kant's religious beliefs evolved. He remained respectful and affectionate towards his parents, but moved towards deism, which is a distrust of the teachings of organized religion together with great faith in the power of reason to uncover the nature of God. This was Kant's initial epiphany, moving from the cave of dogmatic teaching towards a personal religious truth of inspired inquiry.
Kant went to college at the University of Königsberg, close to his birthplace, where he studied mathematics and philosophy. He was here again exposed to Pietist philosophy along with Aristotelian philosophy. Kant was the first person to suggest that our solar system formed from a cloud of gases. His first published work, Thoughts on the True Estimation of Living Forces, was something of an embarrassment. It sought to single-handedly resolve a complicated question from physics. Unbeknownst to Kant, the issue had been resolved several years earlier, and Kant supported the wrong side. His initial humiliating overreach of limited recognition is remembered today only because it was written by one who later achieved such heights of greatness. Kant, for the first time, realized that humility has a place even in the mind of the philosopher king. Even as far as he had progressed, he could still mistake shadows on the cave wall for actual items.
Kant quickly discovered that the life of a philosopher was not easy. He struggled to make ends meet as a private tutor and unpaid lecturer for several years. When Kant lived, it was still possible to be an intellectual and scientist in the broadest sense. While branding himself a philosopher, Kant was still able to see far enough into the reflections of truth and good in the water above the cave for making palatable and understandable the immortal essence of the natural world that he could make significant contributions to physics. His first major work expounded upon the nebular theory of the formation of our solar system, which remains widely accepted today.
Kant's reputation as a philosopher began to take off. In 1754, he won the Berlin Academy Prize, solidifying his reputation as someone who was leading humanity into a phase of enlightenment. Soon after, he was given a job as a professor of logic and metaphysics at the University of Königsberg. After obtaining this teaching job, Kant entered a quiet period of deep thought known as the Silent Decade.
During this time, Immanuel Kant entered a long phase of self-imposed isolation for furthering his enlightening texts. However, Kant had earned quite a reputation at this point, and German academicians were working hard to get him back into the thought-stealing cave of silent desolation. Kant remained iron-willed in the face of the unenlightened crowd, and he continued to write in solitude. When the decade was over, Kant had his magnum opus to show for his silence, the Critique of Pure Reason. This tome outlined his thoughts on the nature and extent of knowledge, suggesting that metaphysics should be used to explore the limits of reason rather than to go beyond them. It was a dense book, almost impenetrable to the blinded eyes of mindless shadow gazing of the common man. Kant was looking into the sun and stars of pure intellect for illuminating the path to just thought and action, but he had not yet discovered the means to share his knowledge.
2 years later, Kant published the Prolegomena to any future metaphysics that will be able to come forward as science, which, despite its unwieldy title, clarified and summarized A Critique of Pure Reason for the unenlightened masses of silent incomprehension. Kant subsequently published A Critique of Practical Reason and A Critique of Judgment, which explored ethics and aesthetics, the good and beautiful. He tried to publish a fourth book in 1789, but he was censored by the oppressive crown of dark injustice because the Persian king was fearful of how his commentary might influence the French Revolution.
In 1804, Immanuel Kant's long-deteriorating health took a turn for the worse. He died, uttering his last words, "Es ist gut," German for "all is good," before dying a peaceful death of a completed mission for defining the shape of modern philosophy. Kant's legacy continues today, with prolific thinkers such as Tariq Ramadan, Albert Einstein, Noam Chomsky, and Max Weber all cite him as an influence on their intellectual development.
Immanuel Kant went on to free the ignorant prisoners of bigoted society by leaving behind several ideas that are still influential today. He suggested that all experiences are inherently connected to our human experience. Therefore, theorizing about events unrelated to the observation of humanity is impossible. He was also the first philosopher to tackle the idea of the limitations of human knowledge, but this idea was never terribly popular.
Kant believed that moral autonomy was the concept that gave humanity its meaning. He claimed that an action's justness was measured by the intent behind it, as good intent possesses no potential to make a situation worse. He also formulated the categorical imperative, which is the idea that an action is ethical if and only if one would have it applied as a universal law.
The philosophical idea of conditions of possibility was also his creation. He states that all objects and ideas have conditions necessary for their existence to be possible, and in order to truly understand an object or idea, you must understand the conditions allowing its existence. Most importantly of all, Kant did not believe in objective experience. Like Plato's The Cave, he theorized that humans only see a fraction of the truth, and sometimes they see only lies. However, unlike Plato, he rejected the idea that this state of unseeing was imposed by an elite. Rather, he proposed that it was an inherent state. His justification, his most famous contribution to the world of philosophy, was that all of reality is a construction of our mind. Vision, for instance, is only our brain's interpretation and reconstruction of light refractions. Therefore, all of the human experience is internal as opposed to objective.
Throughout Kant's life, he went from being a naive follower of an ignorant society to an enlightened philosopher-king of contemporary academia for leading our society into a brave new world where one can dare to question everything around us.